Hey everybody, Marcus here. In MGTOW, we are very good at giving compelling reasons why men should avoid marriage, cohabitation, and relationships in general, and despite our best efforts, there have always and will always be those men who retreat back into the plantation. If MGTOW propels your life, like sails propel a ship, and some men choose to hoist those sails, then perhaps we need an account for a second sail for those who choose the toils of oars. Now, men who retreat back into the plantation are met with condemnation and scorn within our community. Now, I have a brother. He is married. It is clear to me that my brother is terminally blue pill. There are many men who, like my brother, will indefinitely harbor a belief that a relationship is one ends towards which a man ought to strive for in life. This belief is carried by a majority of men. Even if such a man hears the warning spoken of in MGTOW, he will work tirelessly to find a loophole, a justification that will help him resolve his belief in the necessity of a relationship and the dangers of a relationship. So, for men like my brother, I want to offer a second sail by helping them philosophize with a hammer, to lightly strike the idols he worships and help him see which ones are hollow, but not shatter the idols themselves. Let us, for the purpose of this video, assert that the following is true, as most men do, that indeed a relationship is a good towards which a man ought to strive. But at the same time, let us not succumb to claiming the existence of a Nawalt, nor impose such a belief on our blue pill brothers. But what qualities ought such a relationship possess? Well, surely if nothing else can be said about such a relationship, at least it could be said that such a relationship ought to be just. So, how are we to construct a just relationship? Well, surely we cannot simply make the man the slave of the woman or the woman the slave of the man and consider such a relationship just. No. Let us begin our inquiry from behind the veil of ignorance and assume that one does not know if one will be born to be a woman or born to be a man. Without this knowledge, it would serve us best to discover the terms of this relationship in such a way as one would be happy to be either the man or the woman in the relationship. Though we will assert ignorance of the accident of our birth, we need not assert ignorance of anything else we have come to know through MGTOW discourse. We still retain knowledge of hypergamy, gynocentrism, male mother need, the wall, male draw towards youth and beauty, and the dimorphic nature of men and women. Now, if we assert the possibility of a just relationship, then it follows that there are also unjust relationships. Now, would a just person choose to enter an unjust relationship? Well, surely not. For being a just person, they would have knowledge of why they ought not enter unjust relationships. As a person is born single, it follows that a person will remain single until such a time as he enters a just relationship, while rejecting all unjust relationships. Now, as justice is one, unique, unchangeable, and eternal, injustice can take many forms, as there are many ways to move away from justice, much as there are many ways to be wrong, but only one way to be right. From this, it follows that a just relationship will be one, unique, unchangeable, and eternal, while unjust relationships will be diverse, inconsistent, and temporary. If what we said so far is true, then all just people will mean the same thing when they speak of the just relationship, and as such want the same thing. So, from this it follows that both a man and a woman would want the exact same rules in a relationship, if indeed they are both just. If a just person finds a partner who does not agree on the rules of the relationship, then it follows that that partner is themselves unjust, and as such no relationship should take place with them. Now, if a person is just, then they would live a just life. So it follows that if they are single, their solitude will be just as well. As a just person will not choose to go from a just life to an unjust life, they will prefer just solitude over an unjust relationship. Such a person would indeed only move from just solitude to a relationship that is just. In this way, just solitude is better than an unjust relationship for the just person. So, being alone justly is always better than being in an unjust relationship. But what would a just person look like? Well, ought a man be guided by wisdom or foolishness? Well, surely wisdom. But if a man is wise and his wisdom compels him to charge into battle, yet he is a coward and does not charge into battle, would his actions be just? Well, surely not. So, a just man ought to be courageous. And if this man, instructed by wisdom to charge into battle and propelled by courage, does so, but then sees his enemy surrender, ought he cut down his enemy with impunity nonetheless? Well, surely not. So, a just man ought to be temperate as well. But having spared his surrendering foe, ought the just man hand over his weapon to his enemy and treat him as a friend? Well, this too he surely ought not do. So, a just man ought to be prudent. From this, it follows that a just man is guided by wisdom, propelled by courage, while exercising temperance and prudence in his actions. In this way, a just man possesses all these virtues and allows each virtue to serve its purpose, all under the command of wisdom. But let us say that a man was to find a just relationship. What would such a relationship look like? Would it not be guided by wisdom, propelled by courage, and whose rules were temperate and prudent? Well, surely it would. Perhaps the reason why we have a hard time finding justice in a relationship is because we have only ever imagined what we would want a relationship to be, as opposed to what it ought to be. As we have previously shown that a just relationship will be one, unique, unchangeable, eternal, guided by wisdom, propelled by courage, and whose rules were temperate and prudent, it follows that the desires of the people involved cannot ground what a just relationship is, as desires are changeable, subject to foolishness, cowardice, incontinence, and imprudence. As such, we can safely place knowledge of our desires behind the veil of ignorance, along with the knowledge of our sex. From this, it also follows that the just relationship is grounded in virtue. However, it should not be understood that by putting our desires behind the veil of ignorance, that we have also put our biological compulsions such as hypergamy or male draw towards youth and beauty behind the veil of ignorance. This would not make any more sense than putting the biological imperative for food behind the veil of ignorance. No, the desires we must put behind the veil are those that are subjective to us individually, such as a preference for blondes or brunettes, Star Trek or Star Wars, kids or no kids, and so on. By doing this, we leave only those things which are necessary in our account of the just relationship. From this, it follows that we are asserting hypergamy, gynocentrism, male mother need, the wall, male draw towards youth and beauty, and the dimorphic nature of men and women as necessary and not contingent. But here, we must not consider the term necessary to refer to the modal logic imperative of necessary in all possible worlds, but the looser kind, necessary in the same way that eating is necessary for a human being in this world, even though there may be a possible world where it is not the case that humans eat. It can be observed that when asked, people will describe relationships as arrangements that take many forms. Though this is true, there are some arrangements that are called relationships that are not what is typically meant by the word. Is it said that relationships demand work and sacrifice? Well, it is indeed. So if work and sacrifice takes place, then it follows that there is that into which that work and sacrifice is put into. If this is the case, then a relationship is a thing created, separate from both the man and the woman, into which the man and the woman put work into and sacrifice for. Now, it can be understood that a one night stand is a type of relationship, yet we do not typically attribute this title to it. This sort of relationship is better categorized along with any singular exchanges, such as those which appear in commerce. For example, when a man purchases a cup of coffee. As neither the coffee or the money was created as a consequence of the relationship, but through other methods such as employment and farming, we cannot consider a one night stand as a relationship of the type we are referring to. Another type of relationship can be observed in the time boxed fling, such as a summer romance. Though this is usually termed a relationship, it too is not what is ultimately meant by the use of the word. All time boxed relationships can too be placed in the category appropriate for commerce. For example, a man paying to enter a theme park. Once again, neither the money or the theme park exist or are contingent on the relationship. No. It is the case that when we speak of a relationship between a man and a woman, we have in mind permanence, though we do acknowledge this outcome does not usually come about. Indeed, for all other types of interactions between men and women, we seem to have other words, such as one night stand, fling, affair, friend with benefits, date, or just someone I'm seeing. And indeed, to consider that a relationship necessitates permanence is the correct view when considering a just relationship. Let us take a moment to consider this. Do we consider a just relationship to be good and an unjust relationship bad? Well, surely we do. Could it be said that a good relationship would be a successful relationship and a bad relationship an unsuccessful relationship? Well, this too is true. So it follows that a just relationship would be a successful relationship. Now, do we consider a relationship successful if it ends for reasons within the control of either party? Well, we do not. We consider a relationship a failure when it ends due to the instigation of either the man or the woman. From what we have argued, the just relationship has been found to be a relationship that cannot be ended by either the man or the woman. In this way, the just relationship is a permanent relationship. We have previously shown that a just relationship would be guided by wisdom. We also agreed not to put necessary conditions such as hypergamy and male draw to youth and beauty behind the veil of ignorance. Would it be wise to ignore hypergamy and the male draw to youth and beauty in constructing our just relationship? Well, it would not. Is it the case that a woman's beauty increases to a certain point, reaches a zenith, and then begins a decline? Well, it is. Can it also be said that a man's draw to youth and beauty would be best actualized by a woman who is at this zenith? Well, indeed, a man's draw to youth and beauty would be best actualized by such a woman. From this it follows that a woman, while still ascending to this zenith, is less desirable than a woman at this zenith. It also follows that a woman descending from this zenith is less desirable than a woman at this zenith. If this is true, then a man's draw to youth and beauty is a man's draw to a zenith woman. What of hypergamy then? Is it the case that a man who has spent a decade building his career carries more of that which is the end of hypergamy than the same man who was just starting out? Well, indeed, this is the case. From this it follows that a man ascending in those traits which are the ends of hypergamy. Can it be said that a man can continue to ascend in this way indefinitely, or will he too reach a zenith? Well, surely a man cannot continue to ascend indefinitely as life is finite. As such, three possibilities emerge. In the first case, he is in a perpetual state of ascension up until death. In the second case, he reaches a zenith but does not descend afterwards. Finally, he reaches a zenith and begins to descend. If a man is ascending, can it be said that he has reached his limit in possessing those qualities to which hypergamy ends? Well, surely not. So, from this it follows that a man will not reach this limit until he has reached his zenith. Therefore, the ends towards which hypergamy aims are a man at his zenith. Is it true that woman is drawn towards that which hypergamy itself ends? Yes, this is true. Therefore, a woman's hypergamy is her draw towards a zenithed man. There are 9 possible combinations of pairings that can occur between men and women. An ascending woman with an ascending man, an ascending woman with a zenithed man, an ascending woman with a descending man, a zenith woman with an ascending man, a zenith woman with a zenith man, a zenith woman with a descending man, a descending woman with an ascending man, a descending woman with a zenith man, and finally a descending woman with a descending man. As we have previously shown that a man's draw to youth and beauty is his draw for a zenith woman, and a woman's hypergamy is her draw towards a zenith man, then it follows that only one of these 9 possible pairings can form a just relationship. Therefore, a just relationship is a pairing of a zenith woman and a zenith man. This has a few consequences. If indeed it is the case that there exist men that ascend up to the point of death, then such a man can never find himself in a just relationship, as he has never reached his zenith during life. As no woman exists who can ascend in terms of beauty up to the point of death, there is no possible pairing for such a man. The man who reaches his zenith yet never enters a state of descent is also out of luck in the same way. However, I would posit that men of these 2 types do not actually exist, though I do not intend to make any formal argument towards such a conclusion. Let us instead focus our attention on the men that reach their zenith and then enter a state of descent. First, however, Let us attempt to establish the point which constitutes the zenith for a woman and the point that constitutes the zenith for a man. We have previously argued that the zenith for a woman is that point at which a woman's beauty peaks and then begins its descent. Now, I seldom invoke studies in my videos, but as I am determined to put an age to a woman's zenith, I can make an exception. There was a study that canvassed the ratings men placed on the beauty of women based on photographs. The women rated most attractive turned out to be 21 years old. As such, let us posit based on this study that a woman's zenith is 21 years of age. The age at which men on average reach their zenith can be determined in a similar manner. However, men's zenith ought to be computed not on beauty, but on that towards which hypergamy aims. Peak earnings will be a sufficient criteria for our purposes. A study that I found showed that men's peak earnings occurred in their early to mid-50s. Let us then conclude that a man's zenith, namely his limit to acquire those qualities towards which hypergamy aims, can be set at 54 years of age. If we are to accept and work with these numbers, then we must conclude that the just relationship forms between a woman at her zenith of 21 years of age and a man's zenith of 54 years of age. As both enter a state of descent from this point, the relationship becomes changeless. There's another very curious consequence that comes from these ages. Though a woman may begin her state of descent from the age of 21 onwards, there's still the steep drop in beauty we refer to as the wall. Let us posit a woman hits the wall at 30 years of age or so. If a 21-year-old woman pairs off with a 54-year-old man, then there's a certain alignment with respect to the wall. Where the woman's looks fade dramatically 9 years into the relationship, the man would have reached the age of 63. What happens to people around the age of 63? Well, they retire. As soon as the woman hits the wall and loses her beauty, so too the man retires and loses his income as well as any status that may have come from his job. As both the man and the woman were paired off at their zenith, both attained the best deal in life possible in respect to youth and beauty on the part of the man and hypergamy on the part of the woman. Neither could ever do better in relation to these biological imperatives. The age we have assigned to a zenith woman seems intuitively appropriate. The age we have assigned to the man, however, seems to lend itself to resistance despite the strength of the argument. It seems to be the case that the number we have arrived at for the zenith woman is grounded in biology. Now, this is a number that most certainly would not fluctuate due to the social and technological conditions of any given time period. Well, at least not to some great extent. The age of the zenith man, however, is not itself grounded in biology, but by social and technological forces. Perhaps there was a time where the ends towards which hypergamy aims was linked to a biological state of the man. It is reasonable to assume, say, that in a hunter-gatherer society, a man's zenith would have been when, well, he was in and around 30 years old. This would have been the case if his physical strength was directly tied to his ability to acquire that towards which hypergamy aims. Such a link with biology has not been the case for a long time as far as the zenith man is concerned, however. If we were to account for the age of 54 in the zenith man, we come to see that the social and technological conditions that have superseded any biological anchoring in men as far as acquisition of resources is concerned. Now, let us not forget that the just relationship is a pairing of the zenith man with the zenith woman. The ages of 21 and 54 only indicate where one would find such men and women under current social and technological conditions. However, in themselves, these ages are not necessarily the correct ages in all places and times. I'll close this video with a brief summary of what has been argued for so far. It has been demonstrated that a man ought to prefer singleness to an unjust relationship if he himself is just. It was also demonstrated that the just relationship is permanent. Finally, it was shown that a just relationship is a pairing of a zenith woman and a zenith man. Though the account offered in this video does not encompass all aspects of the just relationship, it ought to provide a basis from which a man can build from, if indeed he is a man who has concluded that a relationship is something he ought to pursue. As this argument was constructed from behind the veil of ignorance, it ought not be surprising if there are those who will reject it based on emotional reactions. Once again, I would like to reiterate that I was working towards a just relationship, and not one your passions and desires would compel you towards. Thanks for listening. Go team.